Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. My name is Joe, that is Jay, and today we are talking about Manchester United's front line. And Mbeumo deal seems to be done. Cunha is done. It's that final piece. We obviously, a lot of United fans, most United fans want United to sign a new striker, a big name striker to come in, blow the goals away, push United up the league table, but we know that that might not happen. You wanted to talk a little bit about Joshua Zirkzee and whether he could potentially be that guy, because he's someone that has increased in popularity over the months. I know we obviously had that sort of low point against Newcastle where he got subbed off after 30 minutes?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
But ever since then, it's felt as though he's been gaining more and more fans, to the point where people now, I've seen on social media, you said you've seen the same, people going, actually, could he work as that number 9 if we can't get a striker in?
Yeah.
Do you think that just fundamentally, we'll go into the details, why it could work, why it might not work, but just fundamentally, do you think he could do that role for United?
I think he could. Now, one of the reasons I'm sort of warming to this idea is, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, his goal scoring isn't good enough in terms of the numbers. I think it was 3 Premier League goals last season in over 30 games. I know a lot of those games he didn't start. I mean, one of them he got subbed after half an hour when he did start. But if you watch him on the ball, there's a real quality there. He's very good at linking up with others. He brings others in. The issue you've had at Manchester United over the last year is we haven't got enough goal scorers. So it's all very well and good having someone that's nice on the ball and looks after it and brings in others. But if no one's scoring the goals, then you need more from an attacker and more from someone who is a striker. I know there's this 9.5 sort of argument, but I think for this situation, for what we've got with Mbeumo and Cunha coming in, he's probably going to be your striker if you're going to play him, because those two seem more suited to the number 10 role. I know Mbeumo can play as a number 9, but if you were to choose between Zirkzee and Mbeumo, who's going to be your 9 and 10, you'd probably have Mbeumo as your 10 and Zirkzee as your 9. So I think that whilst there is an issue with the lack of goals, if you've got someone like Brian Mbeumo, who's just scored 20 Premier League goals, if you've got someone like Matheus Cunha, who's got around 15 Premier League goals last season, then there's goals there. So if he's linking up with those players and they're doing a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to scoring goals, and he's weighing in himself now and again, then that can work. The issue you've had is it hasn't worked when you've got Garnacho, who went months without scoring, Hojlund, who's had a terrible time of it last season, and Zirkzee himself is not prolific, then that is a terrible combination. There's only Ahmad, who was in that front 3 when he was playing, who looked like scoring, and then he missed an important part of the season through injury. Chido, who's obviously a young player who's not quite got going yet, lots and lots of times, he's 17. So it's not really worked, but I feel like with Zirkzee, with 2 goal-scoring attackers behind him, it could work. And I like the fact he is a little bit selfless. It can get frustrating when no one else is scoring goals, but if you've got 2 players who want the ball and who can score, and he's a player that actually looks to create for others, probably more than he should at times. Maybe you saw that at Anfield where he passed it to Harry Maguire in the last minute, where you're thinking, he should be shooting there. My issue wasn't that he passed it as much, I thought the quality of the pass wasn't there, because he sort of hit it into the ground.
Bobbled, didn't it?
Yeah, but that can work for me with goal scorers around him. And this is kind of what we've got now. We've got Mbeumo, almost, and we've got Cunha, who are goal scorers. So why not have a player who fits that mould of bringing in others around him?
Yeah, I mean, I fundamentally, I do get your argument. I've got a few concerns about this personally. And, I'm not saying that I'd hate it if it happened. My first concern is the goals. And I know you did mention that, his goal scoring record. And it's not, for me, it's not just his goal scoring record, but I'll start with that. Last season, Rasmus Hojlund, so much criticism, so much stick from United fans and from other teams' fans. A lot of it, I understand why he got as much stick as he did, and I think in the link-up and the build-up, he isn't as good as Joshua Zirkzee, so I'm not trying to pretend that. But just from a purely, can your number 9 get goals perspective, even with all of that stick, Hojlund scored more goals than Zirkzee last season. The season before that, Hojlund scored 16 goals for Manchester United, which is almost more than double what Zirkzee got for us in his first season.
Yeah.
So I think the potential as a goal scorer out and out is definitely higher for Hojlund. I could see a world where the 16 goals from the first season became 20, or at least he repeated that. I struggle to see Joshua Zirkzee, not just from his positioning and the fact that he likes to be this 9.5 where he's not always in the right areas to score, but even just some little things like his ball striking isn't very clean. He doesn't hit the ball very hard. He doesn't sort of, when Rashford hits it, it stays hit kind of thing. Even Hojlund, he's got a crack on him when he wants to. I worry with Zirkzee. I watch him, I think, I can't really imagine you ever scoring 20 goals for Man United in a season. Do you agree with that? And does that worry you, if so?
I don't like hating on Hojlund. You know, I've stuck up for him quite a lot lately, because the more stick he gets, the more I'm inclined to stick up for him. And I hate the fact that at the ground he's getting a load of grief. Online he's getting a load of grief, and he seems to be someone that spends a lot of time online as well. So I think that's getting to him. Hojlund looks a player who has lost so much confidence. I don't know, is the honest answer, if you're going to see a player that we saw in that first season at Manchester United, because we didn't see it last season, and he almost got worse as the season went on, whereas Zirkzee was the other way around. Zirkzee had that sort of watershed moment against Newcastle, gets booed, comes off, goes down the tunnel, almost in tears, comes back out. The crowd, to be fair, got behind Zirkzee. It's easy to slag off United fans and say, oh, we're giving Hojlund stick or whatever. I don't know, I've edited it myself, we can swear. But we're giving Hojlund stick. But the crowd were getting behind Zirkzee, and I think that helped him. But the difference between Zirkzee and Hojlund as well is Hojlund looks like a player who's lost confidence. He looks just almost gone. Now, I hope he turns it around. I've said this a million times, I do. But there's no guarantee he will. Zirkzee at least looks like someone who believes he's good enough for Manchester United. He wants the ball, and he links up with his teammates. One of my biggest worries about Hojlund is he doesn't seem to link up well with his teammates at all. He shouts at him, he throws his arms about, he kicks the football post. He looks like he's taking out his own frustrations on his teammates at time. Now, I don't know if you stick Mbeumo and Cunha next to him, whether all those issues are going to be resolved, whether all of a sudden you get his swagger back and his confidence, and like you say, that player we saw in that first season, he starts scoring loads of goals, or whether he's still frustrated with them if Cunha and Mbeumo are keeping hold of the ball more than they should be. Whether his confidence has gone to the point where he doesn't return as the player that we hope he can. With Zirkzee, I see that as someone who's progressing more. I see someone who looks like he can link up with others and have that little bit of confidence. And look, his goal scoring record isn't great. I'm not going to pretend it is. Is it 3 Premier League goals last season, I think it was. Yeah. I think 2 of them came against Everton. Not great. I think he had, if I'm going to be kind to him, it was about 1,300 minutes or whatever it was. It's like the equivalent of, say, 15 full games or something like that. Yeah. 5 goal involvements. So it's not atrocious, but it's not good enough. I just feel that if you've got goal scorers around Zirkzee, as a collective, that works better than if you've got Hojlund. And the only question with Hojlund is, are you going to see the Hojlund from 2 seasons ago or the Hojlund from 1 season ago? And at the minute, there's nothing to make me believe you're going to see the Hojlund from 2 seasons ago, because Zirkzee's getting better. Yeah. Hojlund's going backwards. I mean, we saw it in the Europa League final. I think if Zirkzee had been fit leading up to that, I think he would have started. I honestly do. Because Hojlund was just sort of, I don't want to say getting worse, because that contradicts my argument about just not laying into him. But you could see his confidence was drained. And I know he had a couple of chances in the final. Let's not pretend he didn't.
He had our best chance.
But it was almost inevitable he was going to get subbed. And I feel like that is the case with Hojlund at the minute. It's like, when he starts, you're just waiting for him to get subbed. And I think he's almost waiting for it. The crowd are on him. With Zirkzee, actually the crowd get excited by him. Yeah. Not all to Adam McCullough levels, who absolutely adores him and thinks he's like Dimitar Berbatov's better younger brother. But there is a player there, and I think that a front 3 of Zirkzee, Cunha and Mbeumo, I actually think could work well and excites me a little bit more, in all honesty, than a front 3 of Hojlund and Mbeumo and Cunha. I just don't know if Hojlund where he's at, and I wouldn't be surprised. Laurie kind of mentioned it on Inside United earlier this week. If Hojlund went in the summer, and I don't think there's any real reports of Zirkzee going anywhere. I don't think you might get the odd one from the odd website, but it doesn't feel to me as though the manager's got any intention of moving on Joshua Zirkzee. While it feels like with Rasmus Hojlund, maybe Ruben Amorim's lost a little bit of faith as well. And it felt like last season was needs must, whereas this season it's time to kick on.
Just in terms of Zirkzee then, sort of less of the comparisons and more just, what can he bring? Do you think he's got enough creativity? Because I know that he's link-up player on the halfway line. The ball hits him and he can do those one-touch bounce-off passes out to the wingers or back into Bruno, whatever. He's good at that stuff. I'm not really bringing that into question. But he's not someone that gets loads of assists either. I think he actually got fewer assists than Hojlund did this season, which again is mad. I know they played more minutes Hojlund, but Hojlund is even less creative than Zirkzee is. Does that worry you at all? Because if you have got Mbeumo and Cunha, who not just have they got a better goal scoring record than the likes of Garnacho and Mount, or whoever else was playing, Rashford early in the season, etc. But they've got a much better creation record than them. I think Mbeumo's getting sort of 7 and 8 assists a season in the Premier League. Cunha often above 5 or 6 as well.
Yeah.
Not just can they create, but they like to score. Do you think Zirkzee can actually make stuff for them? Is he good enough in the final third? In the middle, and his hold-up and his build-up is good. Can he find those tight passes? Can he actually get the ball to them so they can score?
I think so. Right. I do, because one of the biggest gripes I've had with not just Hojlund but with other attackers is the runs off the ball have been woeful at times.
Yeah.
They're not creating any space. They're not getting it behind. They're not making the defenders work hard enough. It's like you're watching it, you're thinking, what are you doing? What's going through your mind here? And we've seen it with Cheetah when he comes on. Cheetah actually makes some runs where you go, that's a refreshing change.
Yeah.
And I think with Mbeumo and Cunha, you'll see more of that. And Zirkzee's the type of player that I think would be able to link up with him. I think he looks for his teammates quite a lot. I think part of the issue as well is in the past and last season, we haven't had those runs where you haven't had teammates where he's been looking and I'm not going to say he's been amazing and his teammates have all let him down. That's not the case at all. But you can see as a sort of a front three unit, at times they look all over the gaff. And I think if you have players like Cunha and Mbeumo, who defenders will be wary of as well, who defenders will be sort of scared of, because too often it's easy for the defenders. It was easy in that Europa League final at times when it was just shut up shop and it was done.
Yeah.
I don't know if Zirkzee was part of the problem there, but it's been too easy for Manchester United, for teams facing Manchester United. Far too often with someone like Hojlund, we've seen him tussling with a defender near the halfway line, and you think that's not.
And the ball, he'll do it where he'll be fighting someone. And the ball will just bounce a yard in front of both of them.
Yeah.
And like neither of them got on it because they were just scrapping each other.
Yeah. And then we've seen at Old Trafford where, Liza Cunha has created space and created chance obviously for Wolves, where he's caused problems. And I think with someone like Zirkzee, having players making those runs, who is a selfless player as well. And I get your point about his assists. His assists aren't amazing. But I think with players who are better at finishing and are more proficient, his assists will go up. And I think I've seen someone tag me in a tweet the other day saying and this will sound like completely contradictory because I used to slag him off quite a lot, but they were saying they feel like there's a similarity between Firmino, Salah and Sadio Mane that you could have with Mbeumo, Cunha and Joshua Zirkzee. I get where they were coming from with that. If you've got an attacker who can contribute goal involvements, can create, maybe it's not the goal itself, but he can create things for those around him. Which Zirkzee, there's a reason the United fans are warming to him as well. Let's not forget that. It's not like if you weren't scoring enough goals and you weren't getting enough assists, why would anyone like you as an attacker? Because they can see there's a player there. And whilst I praise United fans and said we got behind him, we're not just blindly going to follow someone because he's got an half decent touch. There's something there where you can say, okay, there is someone there who can do a job for Manchester United. Yeah. Just needs maybe better players around him. And also, and I've said this to you, and you've said similar things, second season can be massive for every United player. I think so many players deserve a second season. Zirkzee's not had his. Mount's had 2 seasons, and we're willing to give him another go. Hojlund's had 2 seasons, we're all willing to give him a go. I think Zirkzee deserves a second season where he's actually given an opportunity. An opportunity in a functional Manchester United team with some decent attackers around him. And this isn't me just let's give Zirkzee a chance because it's make-a-wish. Let's give him a chance because I think there's a player there with better players around him who can do a job for us.
He's got a bit... The thing with that he's got in his favour is he's a unique profile of player. He's tall, he's big, but his best attributes are kind of his movements, not as in like his movement, but the little shoulder drops and the feints and the half stutters and steps and the touch he has. He's kind of, he plays like a smaller player. Almost at times, I think he doesn't know his size and he should use his size a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
He doesn't have the physicality that goes along with his size. But I think that there's a unique profile there where you look at him and you go, I don't expect you to play the way you do. And that's quite endearing. And he's got a visual kind of quality to him as well where, you put him and Hojlund next to each other. Similar height, they're not the same type of player at all. I think Hojlund's quicker and more athletic, but they are completely opposite in terms of how they play. Yeah. Hojlund's a sort of running off the ball, one touch kind of guy, stick the ball in the net. I think Zirkzee, he likes the ball at his feet, and there's an attraction to players like that. Players who like carrying the ball and who have got a sort of a swagger and a movement to him that Hojlund doesn't have, and Zirkzee does have that.
I think that's a good point. I think that's why you see the crowd getting behind him more.
Yeah.
And I see that's why you see the crowd getting on Hojlund's back more. because when the ball comes out and he loses it, or the touch isn't great, you can hear that groan, people shouting stuff at him, which I don't really particularly like. With Zirkzee, at least sort of aesthetically, it looks good. When the ball comes
I think that if you look at the two, and obviously they aren't these players, but if you sort of push Zirkzee to kind of the end extreme of what that player is, it's a sort of Berbatov style player, isn't it? Somewhere between Paul Pogba and Dimitar Berbatov. Tall, but great touch, silky, little bit.
He's been compared to Berbatov a lot, and people have done those sort of like clips where they've shown Berbatov doing tricks and keeping hold of the ball or doing whatever, and Zirkzee doing something similar. So that's a good comparison.
And if you push sort of Hojlund to the end of it, it's Haaland.
Yeah,
it's straight lines, big, heavy, fast, athletic guy who just isn't, his touch isn't great. He's not a great footballer, but he's just purely effective. And I do think that these sort of Berbatov kind of style players they get like a fan base around them more than the Haaland efficiency monster type players. So I do think that might be helping Zirkzee as well. But that isn't necessarily a bad thing. I'm not knocking him for that. I think if you have fans and you have people who stay on your side, that can help you ride through those difficult times. Like Martial was someone he had a lot of stick, but despite injuries, bad performances, seasons in other clubs, he had a core fan base.
Martial FC.
The Martial FC were there regardless. Yeah. And other certain players didn't have that same kind of like just unrelenting fan base. Just finally then on all this, because I think I can see why this might happen if United don't sign a big name.
That's a good point as well. If we don't, I'm not saying if we sign Victor Gyökeres, then we should start Joshua Zirkzee over him, obviously. But there's a good chance United don't sign another striker.
Yeah. Would you be willing to let Hojlund leave? Would you be up for that then?
I think if we don't sign another striker, having fewer strikers next season would be a bad move. Yeah. I think at the very least I'd give Hojlund until January as an option. Yeah. Because you need, like you say, okay, we're not signing another striker. I'm going to start Joshua Zirkzee. Zirkzee's had injuries. He arrived injured, didn't he? According to some reports, I know he was at the away with Holland, but they were saying he wasn't fully fit then. Yeah. So it was like if you get Zirkzee in and he gets injured, then you've got what? Cheeto as 17. Yeah, you can't do that.
You can sort of shoehorn Cunha or Mbeumo.
Maybe Ahmad.
Then what you lose?
You've got Ahmad, Cunha, and Mbeumo. With all of this as well, people might be wondering, well, what's happening with Ahmad? Yeah. I think he could play as a wing back. I'd like to see him in the team still. And I think we saw it. I mentioned that Everton game earlier where Zirkzee got a couple of goals. Ahmad was phenomenal in that game as a wing back. And I think that could work for him. And also having more than one option would be nice. Yeah. Because far too often it's been like, well, that's your front three and that's it.
And if one of them isn't fit, the replacement is, half the players.
Yeah. So
realistically, you need players in there
4 or 5, don't we?
As good.
Yeah. And I think that can work with Ahmad, where there can be a bit of rotation as well. So look, I think it can work, and I think that if Zirkzee starts, Hojlund, it might even do him a bit of good not to be starting every week. Honestly, just get your sort of confidence back. Maybe he comes on for as a sub, odd cameo, gets a goal, gets a bit of confidence back, becomes a player that is useful to Manchester United. Yeah. I think there was, like you mentioned, that first season, there's definitely a player there, and we saw it in glimpses last season, just not enough of it to really make me overly confident that he can be the man to lead the line for Manchester United. But I'm more than happy to be proven wrong on that front, and I think him being a sub, Zirkzee, Cunha and Mbeumo being your front three starters, I think that could work. And then if we're having these conversations in January about Hojlund's got no confidence, he looks done, he looks shot. It does feel like he's got suitors. I think Serie A clubs are looking at him. Then maybe you pull the trigger there, because I think you need to be a little bit wary of losing players to injury and just having no options. Yeah, definitely. Right, thank you very much for joining us. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If we don't sign anyone, would you play Zirkzee up front, or would you stick with Hojlund? Because let's be honest, Hojlund has been the main guy so far through injuries and lack of other positions. But would you keep him there, or would you sell him, bring Zirkzee in, and try and have that kind of Firmino sort of? Yeah, because I was thinking for quite a while Zirkzee's more of a 10. I thought the 9.5 thing was nonsense, but I think with these two players in particular, it could work. Could work. Yeah. Right. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. This has been a chat with me and Jay. See you in a bit.